Wow, that was cool. It works, right? Okay. So one thing Mrs. Lindsay didn't say was I was a 16-year special ed teacher. So yeah, so I have a strong background in special education. I also developed our first, as a principal in elementary school, I started our first integrated pre-K with the Bergen County Special Services, which is an excellent organization. And it actually brought in revenue and served our students. So I think I have a background in that. I also served temporarily as our director when I was a principal, also due to the fact that we had a vacancy and the superintendent asked me to fill in for a little while, and I have a background in that. So I have a long experience. I have a lot of history in special education. I deal a lot with it as a superintendent. So STEM is really something. I mean, I know it's the buzzword and we're talking about it and all the things that we kept saying. And this thing that they're talking about, this 3D printer, I walked in our room the other day and our teacher gives me this thing. I'm like, what is this thing? It's a little, like, it looks like a screw with two nuts on it. And he goes, yeah, we just made that on the printer. I was like, what do you mean you made it on a printer? So he shows me this printer thing, and the kid designed this thing. So the question's about whether or not it's going to be the traditional program, like where you make wood things. You're right, things will change, but it's really morphing into a 21st century skill, but the kids still do things with their hands. So my comment was to them, I go, once you guys figure out how to clone a Reservoir Pi, call me, I'm back. So they're working on that for me today. Today I walk in and they're making an iPod case. Literally, somebody designed an iPod case on a computer, and this thing is making it out of plastic, and I'm looking at it going, it's not a Reservoir Pi, but it's kind of cool. So I thought that was really great. Another thing I wanted to comment on was I was really impressed with the fact that you brought the kids into the meeting today. That's something that I started in Verona. I think it's very important to have the children in the meeting, because sometimes I think us as adults, we all sit up here with our ties and stuff, some without ties, but some with. And we're all sit here and we forget what it's about sometimes. And remember, it's always about the kids, all the time, 100%. Now, this Board of Education, their most important thing they do, believe it or not, is hiring a superintendent. That's their most important thing they do. So you can imagine how humbling it is that they put all this time and energy into two years worth of searching, and they picked me. So obviously, you know, it's a humbling experience, and I'm very proud to be able to be here in my town. And who has a bigger stake in this than me, right? We talk about the STEM and growth of careers and things like that. I mean, you know, I don't want my kids in my basement when they're 40, so, you know, I'm all about this, you know, because we said like 19, and that's about it. So, all right. How many of you are familiar with the book, How Children Succeed? Who's read that? Nobody? Oh, we got one. All right, good. I figured I'd start off with our first thing from me would be an assignment. So get that book, read that book. Our first thing that we're going to have a book study once I get in here sometime next fall. I'm going to call you all together and we're going to talk about that book. It's a great book. It really, the thing that I like the most about it, and Dr. Cullis, if you remember this part, I thought it was great. It talks more about a kid's character than their intelligence in terms of success. And one of the things that they really say is perseverance. Think back when you were a kid. Remember when you had to do those little cards with the color thing on it and you sat in there? Who remembers that? They were called SRA. You remember those? Remember the stories are always boring? Like you read like one line, right? And all of a sudden your mind's thinking about sleigh riding or something in like a second, right? So what he's saying is perseverance and maturity allows you to actually fight through the boredom to be able to answer it. I thought that was really interesting. He also talks about grit, and grit is really basically toughness. Interesting thing is the guy's name is Paul Tough. It's not Paul Antosk, he's tough, but it's Paul Tough, another guy. Another book, I'm going to give you guys two things. The second one after that is going to be Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Another excellent book about basically things don't just happen. There's a reason for everything, and 10,000 hours and all that. So we're gonna do that. Those are going to be two things that we're going to do. So I really, at this time, I like to call up my wife just to stand up. You probably know her. She coaches softball. She might have coached some of your kids. Lisa Forte.
Yay, Mama.
She groups. It's like her favorite thing to do, especially when there's a lot of adults. She loves it. My son Anthony, stand up, man. Come on. Anthony, my third grader, he goes right here to this school. And my daughter Melissa. Now, I feel like I did a lot of things in Verona, and it's a great community. I grew up in West Orange, right next door. Believe it or not, a lot of the kids I went to high school with actually have kids in the district, so I have a great connection with them. My favorite, my most important accomplishment, the thing that I'm the most proud of is this one thing. I can go in any classroom in that district, and the kids will know not only who's that guy, but Mr. Forte. I can go to any event in the town, anything, it doesn't matter, and people will know who I am, because I've taken the time and energy to connect with community. That was a big thing of mine. It was a very big, important initiative, and I plan on doing that here. I do have a head start here, obviously, but I think it's very important to connect with the people. You know, the kids. One of the things I talk about this. Paul and I were talking about it too a few times. About sometimes when you're busy, we have a lot of stuff to do. So sometimes you look for something you're going to make the biggest impression in the shortest amount of time. And how else could you do that by just pitching a doubleheader at recess in kickball, trying to get those curves in and strike out those first graders? You know what I mean? They all go home and say, yeah, oh yeah, the superintendent threw some curves and struck us out. And, you know, that's an impact you make on kids, and they remember that. So also, we do this pretty cool thing with a reading blog where we all read one book and then we go on and write it. So my son and I were reading The Cricket in Times Square. I'm making comments on there. The kids are writing back, so we connected that way as well. So basically what I want to do here is I want to learn about the district. I know the community pretty well, but I want to learn about the business community and make connections with that. I pride myself in trying to bring in external revenue, try to do things that you may not be able to do within the budget and find other ways to do it. Instead of just saying, oh, we can't do it because you don't have the money, you find another way. And one of the things we did this year is probably my second most proud thing I did. Now, there's a couple, but this was really important because it made a big impact on kids. Before I got to Verona, they eliminated freshman sports altogether. And I was not happy about that, but I couldn't put it back in the budget considering we had so many other needs. So I couldn't go to the public and say, yeah, I know all this other stuff needs to be done, but we're going to do freshman sports. So rather than just complain about it, what we did was we found corporate sponsorships to pay for the freshman sports, and now we have it back. So 25 kids that couldn't play freshman basketball last year are now playing. So those are the kinds of things that I mean, like find other ways. Don't just say it's okay.